Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrea Bonina, and I am a partner here at Bonina and Bonina. I am going to be talking to you today on our FAQ Friday about the different types of policies that you may want to consider to protect yourself and your family. Whenever a client comes to us and they've been seriously injured, one of our first inquiries is to find out what insurance policies are available, because obviously we always want to get the most and the best compensation for our clients and to make sure that they have adequate coverage available to compensate them for everything they've been through. So this is a special concern in auto litigation. I'm going to be talking about some specific types of automobile policies today. And in New York, in case you haven't been following the news, accidents where pedestrians and bike riders are injured have been skyrocketing in the last year. There have been some fatal accidents that have been really horrible to hear about. And I think it's important that you make sure that you are aware of what your policies cover and don't cover, because your broker might not always tell you, and might expect you to ask if you want something additional. So, whenever there's an accident, the first thing I want to talk about is timely notification. Whenever there is an accident, you have to, as soon as it's practical, you have to notify your insurance carrier. If it's an auto or a household accident, it doesn't matter. Do it as soon as you can. And the reason for that is that insurance policies are written with a clause in them that say that if the insurance company is not notified in a timely fashion, that they can disclaim and deny coverage. And if if you are unfortunately in a situation where you might get sued because of a car accident or an accident on property that you own, you do not want to be in a situation where the insurance company says, we would have given you a lawyer and we would have provided coverage, but you notified us too late. So even if you don't think that there's going to be litigation, always, 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 as soon as you can, notify your carrier that there's been an accident and that there may be a claim. So in New York, anyone who's been in an auto accident knows that there is no fault coverage. Everyone gets no fault coverage. No fault is great. It gives you up to $50,000 of coverage for medical expenses and economic loss. But there are a couple of things that you need to be aware of that could cause issues with the coverage if you don't pay attention to the time periods. First and foremost, anytime you're going to be making a claim on a no-fault policy so that your medical bills are covered and your lost time from work is covered, anytime you have to notify no fault within 30 days of the accident. And if you've ever been injured, you know that you have other stuff on your mind. I mean, you are worried about how you're going to get money in for your family, whether you're going to be able to go back to work, how much coverage how much treatment you're going to need. And you may not be thinking, gee, I need to get in touch with the no-fault carrier. You should be, because 30 days goes fast. So make sure if you are injured in any sort of auto accident that you notify the no-fault carrier as soon as possible, because you want to have that $50,000 available to cover your medical bills. Additionally, you may not realize it, but any medical bills that you want covered by no fault, you have to submit them to the no fault carrier within 45 days of treatment. And again, 45 days can go fast when you've got lots of other stuff on your mind. If you have lost earnings, those need to be submitted within 90 days. 90 days is a little bit longer, but still it can go fast when you're dealing with a lot at home. If there are other insurance policies in your household, if you're injured in an auto accident, if somebody else has a car, if there are other drivers or vehicles that have policies, notify those carriers too, because often those policies may come into play and provide additional coverage for you, especially if you have serious injuries. So it may not just be your policy that you need to be aware of, but whether you have family members and household members that have additional policies. Even if you're not sure if the policy applies, notify them. Better to have them say this policy doesn't apply than have them say, oh, you would have had coverage, but now it's too late. So, some additional types of coverage in New York that can apply if you've been in a car accident. The first is mandatory. It's uninsured motorist coverage. That's mandatory. Everyone has that, and that's meant to protect you if you are injured in an accident by someone who is breaking the law by not having insurance coverage. So, that you automatically have. But there's another type of coverage called underinsured coverage. That is not mandatory. It's something that you have to ask for and you have to pay an extra premium for. And, I'm always surprised that brokers don't explain that at meetings to people when they're getting policies in place, because it's important to have that. I mean, in New York State, the minimum insurance that a driver needs to have is $25,000. If you are catastrophically injured, $25,000 is nothing. It's not gonna do anything for you. So, having an underinsured policy that could come into play, and provide you coverage if you have terrible injuries is important. It's something that you should look into and see whether it's something that you can do to protect yourself and your family. Supplementary uninsured motorist coverage, also called SUM coverage, covers both uninsured and underinsured motorists, and it will help you if you're injured in an accident. It's, again, optional. It has to be requested. And for that type of coverage to apply and to come into play to give you extra compensation, you have to comply with certain qualifications. First and foremost, as with all insurance policies, you have to give timely notice to the carrier. Additionally, you may have to give a written statement. You may have to submit to an examination under oath where somebody from the insurance company takes information from you about how the accident happened and what your injuries are. Your attorney can be present with you for that and should be present. Most people at that stage of litigation do have an attorney. You should talk with your attorney about that. Additionally, if you file a summons and complaint, you have to provide that to the SUM carrier. That way they can monitor the litigation. And you have to exhaust all policy limits before that SUM policy will be available to you to compensate you. And so, if in the example I gave with a $25,000 policy, that policy would have to have been offered completely, all of it, in order to go forward against your SUM carrier. Additionally, the SUM limits that you have to be greater than the bodily injury coverage that's available for the at-fault vehicle. So if you were injured by someone who had a $25,000 policy and you have $100,000 of SUM coverage, you're going to have that coverage available to you. If you are injured by someone who has $250,000 of coverage and your SUM policy is for $100,000, that SUM policy will not be available because the coverage of the at-fault vehicle is greater than what you have. Additionally, as with any claim, you're going to have to show that the injuries you are claiming came from the accident. Now, SUM policies only apply to auto litigation. They're special for automobile coverage. There are policies that cover any type of accident, and those are called umbrella policies. Umbrella insurance is basically extra insurance that provides protection beyond the existing limits of either your auto policy or your homeowner's policy, and it can be something that is very important if you have a catastrophic injury. An umbrella policy kicks in when the underlying limits are exhausted. So if you are injured in a car accident and you needed like expensive surgery and you were going to be out of work for a while, that minimum insurance in New York, that 25,000, would not do anything for you, and your umbrella policy would kick in to cover anything beyond the at-fault driver's limits. So if you had an umbrella policy, it would do many of the same things that an SUM policy would do, but your umbrella policy would also cover if it was, let's say, an act like a trip and fall at somebody's home or an accident on someone's property. The umbrella policies, I think, are a very good idea. It proved incredibly important actually for a client of ours a few years ago. It was an individual who was a guy in his 50s who was trying to stay fit. He was out riding his bike, and someone driving made a left turn as he was going straight and hit him on his bike, and he was thrown from his bike. He suffered catastrophic injuries. He had multiple fractures, including a fractured hip that required multiple surgeries. He needed extensive rehabilitation, and he was self-employed. He ended up like having significant lost earnings. And the car that hit him had a $250,000 policy, which for a non-catastrophic accident might be enough. But for this individual who had such terrible injuries, it was wholly and completely inadequate. Thankfully, he had both underinsured and excess policies that were able to be accessed, and we were able to get him compensation from, so that he was able to be made as whole as he could be, and to have a just settlement that compensated him for the terrible things that happened to him. And I was very happy that he had those policies available, and also that he came to us, because not every lawyer, there are a lot of people that say they know how to do accident litigation, but don't make that inquiry about what insurance policies are in their own client's household and what other insurance might be available. And you have to do that early on, because that notification has to be done within 30 days so that you have full coverage and that every possible available insurance is there to compensate your client. So if you're injured, make sure that when you go to a lawyer, it's someone who knows how to do this type of litigation, knows all the right questions to ask, and knows what policies to ask about, so that they can make sure every possible and available coverage is there so that you can be made whole again. Hopefully this answered your questions about insurance and how insurance works when you're injured. I thank you for joining me this Friday, and I hope that next Friday, John, that you'll be able to join my brother and partner, John Bonina. He's going to be answering questions about birth injuries, and if you tune in next Friday at noon, he'll have all those questions answered for you. Thank you so much.